Matchmaker, do your thing. The Bachelor and the Bachelorette. We laugh at the construct put together to help one person find love amongst a sea of suitors. Okay, it is put together for our entertainment, but once in a blue moon, it does lead to love. Is this any more ridiculous, though, than meeting on a subway platform or in a bar, or, God forbid, being introduced by a third party? Love will find its way if the connection is meant to be. So who are we to judge?
Come here, Shayna Madel. Sit beside me. I have a story to tell. My grandfather Louis tapped the cushion on the pink brocade seat of the sofa, inviting me to cuddle up beside him. I nestled up to his side as he smiled at me with a lopsided curve of his lip. He folded his shaking hands onto his lap, his voice raspy and trembling, reflecting the ravages of Parkinson's disease, but still holding the cadence of a proud man. He began his story as he always did. I love you. You are a product of the love from the story I am about to tell. I looked up at his handsome face and pictured the younger man. His mustache must have been fuller and black as coal, his hair curling onto his collar, his strong 6-foot frame unstooped as he saluted his fellow comrades. I could imagine the young woman who lived in his village swooning and hoping that Mama and Papa would perhaps make an arrangement. Ricky, my grandparents' rambunctious little green and blue parakeet, chirped his song as he hopped around the carpeted living room floor. I don't believe Ricky ever considered himself to be a bird, and most assuredly puffed up his feathers with pride, knowing his ability to speak human. As my grandfather began his story, Ricky, imitating my grandparents' Yiddish accent, tweeted out, Shayna Madel, Shayna Madel. We both giggled as we watched Ricky take to wing and fly to the top of his cage. I told Grandpa Louis how I would often imagine Ricky toting a tiny little yarmulke on the top of his little green head as he bobbed around the living room floor. We stifled our last giggles before the story of Grandpa's youth began to unfold and repeat to me once again. So there I was, a 20-year-old mensch. I could read, I could write, I was very strong. I was handy with the needle and thread and making a good living sewing a pair of pants, a vest, a lady's blouse. I was very respected and took very great care of my mama and papa and my sister Rebecca. It was all there, all in a good line, in a good place. Now it was time to take a wife. So I went and I took myself over to Madame Sophie, the village matchmaker. I wanted my own personal Cupid to help me find the future Mrs. Horowitz. She didn't come cheap, that shyster Madame Sophie, but her reputation for a good match was strong and steady. Grandpa Louis sat up a little straighter. He winked at me and smiled. I caught the cue as always. This was my special invitation to join him as he began to sing Matchmaker, Matchmaker, Make Me a Match. Find me a catch and catch me a catch. Ricky joined the chorus, adding his 2 cents to our duet. I sat across from Madame Sophie, listening to her spiel. Grandpa continued, I have the most wonderful young lady. She is beautiful, educated, and a fine housekeeper, cook, and seamstress. Sophie's eyes lit up as she waved her brown, speckled, wrinkled hands. So impressed was she by her own description of her newest wares. She's definitely a winner, Mr. Horowitz. She's such a find, Madame raved on. She's not from our village, but I personally visited the families only a day journey from here. Bertha is worth the ride and worth the 30 rubles. Sophie held out her hand to receive her due. So I asked myself, why not? I'll take the ride to meet Bertha and see for myself if 30 rubles is a good price to pay for a good wife. So Dayan Chikla, I borrowed a horse. I packed a satchel stuffed with a fresh pair of pants, a white shirt, a few crackers, and a bottle of water to sustain me as I rode towards the Russian border, a day's journey to a foreign village. It was a good horse and good weather, which made my travel pleasant and easy as I entered the next day into a village smaller than my own. I stopped some good citizens as they passed by asking for directions to the walled Jewish ghetto at the edge of town. I was excited and just a little nervous when I passed through the opening of the walled enclave and guided my horse along the narrow dirt road in search of the third house on the right. Each house spoke of terrible poverty, which saddened me. I reached the third house, dismounted my horse, and knocked on the third board, posing as a door. An old woman's hand gripped the door and opened it, partially peering out to see who was this visitor knocking on her door. Fear seemed to haunt her eyes as she asked me what I wanted and what I was doing there. I handed her Madame Sophie's letter of introduction, explaining, as she was staring blankly at the document, that I was here to meet Bertha. The old lady's eyes widened in understanding as she pulled me gently into her home. Come, come, she held her hand as she guided me towards the rickety table. Sit, I will go and get Bertha. She is out and back plucking chicken feathers, so I hope you won't mind too much the unpleasant smell. I looked around the small room. A heavy black iron stove dominated one full wall. 3 bed cots covered in raggedy blankets occupied the adjacent wall space. A small furball puppy wagged his tail as he got up from his corner and approached me. He sniffed my leg, decided that I was friendly, I guess, and jumped up onto my lap. Puppy's ears stood up a little straighter as he heard the approach of footfalls. The old lady's arm was wrapped so proudly around the shoulders of a beautiful young lady, as advertised by the brilliant Madame Sophie. Mama took Bertha's hand and came closer to my chair. Puppy jumped from my lap and circled happily around Bertha's dusty boots. Mama practically pushed Bertha into the opposite chair of mine as she patted Bertha's shoulders in reassurance. Bertha was very, very beautiful, soft-spoken, her intelligent blue eyes boring lovely holes into my heart. We spoke for a very long time, each moment drawing me closer and wanting to know more of this lovely young woman. Believe it or not, Dianchikla, I was falling in love. I left my betrothed with the promise of my return for our wedding day in a month's time. Enough talk, you two. My grandmother Bertha's voice brought us back to the present. Dinner is ready. Come now before the soup. It will get cold. Grandpa Louis and I sat at the table while Grandma Bertha placed a bowl of steaming matzo ball soup in front of each of us. I watched my grandmother carefully and so lovingly tuck a fresh iron napkin under Grandpa's collar. Eat, essen, enjoy. She sat down at her place at the table. She winked at me as the 3 of us ate, essened, and enjoyed. Their love was still palatable as that day in the tiny village on the Russian border when Bertha came to meet her Louis, her skirt covered in chicken feathers, her blue eyes filling with happy tears.